Hello, welcome back to Dr. Introspect TV, and it's your host, Dr. Introspect, and I'm back. So that's our intro. Today I'm coming back to you podcast style with another video. And how have you been? I just would like to touch base with you and know how you've been going through the month of April so far. And just before we go right in, I would just like to leave a disclaimer here that all the content that is shared here in this video and on the channel are for information and educational purposes. Please do not use them to diagnose or treat yourself with any issues. If you watch this content or this video and you find that you resonate with some of the concepts and you find that you need help, please reach out to a mental health professional in your area, perhaps a therapist, psychologist, or even a life coach. Alright, so now that's done, I would like to say that the analysis that we're going to be carrying out today was actually requested by someone in the community, so thank you for that request. As you know, this is mostly a self-directed channel, but I do appreciate the suggestions every time they do come in. It really does help my work or my job to be easier, because that way I know that I'm giving you what you want. So if you have any suggestions or thoughts or ideas on maybe a movie, a series, or a book that you find might be beneficial to the community, go ahead and leave it in the comment section below or reach out to me via the other platforms on social media. So without further ado, we're going to be talking about WandaVision. Okay, so we're back. I know that this is kind of old. I'm bringing this analysis a little after the show has run its course, but I think even though it's not the most timely fashion, it has given away enough time for many people to get through watching the show. So hopefully a lot of people can be able to more relate to the findings that they might pick up from this analysis. And you might find that I might not spend so much time dwelling on so many aspects of it, because the characters and the storytelling does it already. And nonetheless, I just want to start off by commenting on something that I saw. Well, for those that are familiar with the genre of superhero movies, they find that it's a genre that they think is more suited to men because of the level of action and sometimes gore and violence. In this day and age, with the movements of feminism and female equality and representation, we're seeing more movies and storylines being adapted in that way. We find a lot of men really questioning the place of female storytelling in superhero movies, and I find that quite interesting. The first time I came across this discourse was when I found a couple of men complaining on social media about how the rebooted X-Men movie, the one about Jean, was so feminine in the sense that it was all about emotions. I was really taken aback, and I saw those comments come out again when the Wonder Woman 1984 came out last Christmas as well. I mean, granted, it was a weak storyline, but I found people basing that on the fact that the main character is female, so as a result you're going to have storylines that play more into emotional things as well. Of course, when I heard that, my counter argument was, Well, the main character in 1984 is female, but the main villain is male, and you could argue that they almost had equal level of characterization in the storytelling, even though it's a Wonder Woman film. So why do we say the movie is a flop? Because we made female the lead and there's an overemphasis on emotionality. So with that background, looking at WandaVision, I found people making such comments again that it was too much of a touchy-feely movie and they should take out touchy-feely things out of superhero movies, because you don't come to superhero movies to feel your feelings. You come to basically experience the masculine side in form of action and gore and violence and all of that. And this is not to say that there is anything in particular that's wrong with action and violence and any of that. I do watch those genres, I have to say so myself. So for those that probably didn't pick up on this, even though I feel it was very obvious, the WandaVision story is a story about grief and grief processing. And I'm finding that the direction that Marvel under the Disney establishment is going right now, there is an emphasis on the human aspects in their storytelling. And I believe that it's probably, maybe, I'm not going to say it's because of the pandemic, because these things were probably shot before then, but after going through and still going through a pandemic and seeing people die and having a surviving population of humanity that now have to deal with the grief and the trauma of this horrible event, you are going to want to create systems for where people can feel safe to go and get the help that they need. You want to destigmatize trauma and trauma therapy in such a way that people in our communities can go and get the help that they need, and they're not looked as people that are defective in society or marginalized in some way because they need mental health care. And that's actually something I'm seeing in The Falcon and Winter Soldier, because I just started seeing that show as well. And from the first episode, we see Bucky having a therapy session. And I think about all the movies I've seen of Marvel. Okay, I don't know what they did in the 80s or 90s or 70s, but in our age, in our time and generation, I'm not quite sure I remember any therapy scene. So if I'm wrong, definitely correct me in the comments, but I thought it was quite a way to start the show. Therapy. So here we're seeing what can happen to someone when they are affected by a traumatizing experience and they're not able to process that in a healthy way, and the importance of seeking the help that you need to process that. For some people, when they look at this story and they look at it just on the surface, they say this is a story about a woman that just loses her senses because her lover dies, right? And when you look at it on the surface that way, it seems like almost the typical storyline, although we see many psychopath stories that are that way, that the man loses his senses because a girl didn't give him a number, and now he's murdering women that have black hair and wear a medium because that's what the girl that turned him down looked like. Okay, you see that, and they don't characterize that as a form of emotionality when a man is doing that, even though it's a form of emotional dysregulation. But you see that it's quickly the translation of what happens in the woman's side. And it's more than that, Okay, it's not about that on the surface. What we actually see is the level of trauma that the character Wanda has gone through her entire life. And it seems like it's just a superhero thing, it's a fictional thing. But there's so many people in the world today, even you listening, you could have gone through a series of trauma. It could be just one instant, like that has left you with PTSD, or it could be a series of abuse, a series of psychological abuse, emotional abuse. Some people have been raped, all of that over and over again, and you have complex PTSD, and you're walking through life with this trauma that you haven't processed, and in one way or the other it still sips out and it affects your life, even if it's unconscious. And we see that happening here with Wanda. For Wanda, we find that a lot of what was happening to her, she was unconscious of. Yes, there were things she was doing consciously, but for the most part it was unconscious, and we find that she had dissociated from a lot of her memories. A lot of these tragic memories she had as a child, she either could not remember them, or they were now distorted in such a way that the story had been retold in her mind. And for the record, this is something that is completely normal. When the mind and the body feel like you cannot handle it, dissociation can be a form of coping, because the human body is built to survive. So if it feels that you might not be able to survive with this, it's going to create that kind of thing so that you can keep on living. Now, it's not the healthiest thing, but at least you can wake up and go to your job, right? You know, there are other ways that people try to cope. Of course, that's how addictions come about. Some people also become emotionally numb so that they don't feel anything. There are all ways to cope. Now, from the movie, we are reminded in memory that Wanda had to experience the loss of Vision twice. She killed him, and Thanos reversed time, and then he killed him by taking the stone, and she had to watch him die twice. For some of you that don't know, trauma can happen in different ways. You can have trauma from being in an accident, and you can also have trauma from watching someone get in an accident. You're across the street and you watch someone get shot. You don't even have to know that person, but just seeing that experience, that's another form of its own trauma. So you have Wanda experiencing both, in that she lost someone that she actually loves twice before her eyes. She has that connection to that person, and then she witnessed the person's own trauma. You add to that, and you have from childhood as well, during the war that was happening, how she lost her parents, and it was just her and the boy. And you can also have trauma from watching someone get in an accident. You're across the street and you watch someone get shot. You don't even have to know that person, but just seeing that experience that's another form of its own trauma. So you have Wanda experiencing both, in that she lost someone that she actually loves twice before her eyes. She has that connection to that person, and then she witnessed the person's own trauma. You add to that, and you have from childhood as well, during the war that was happening, how she lost her parents, and it was just her and the boy. Now, it's not uncommon for people that have been through very tragic circumstances in their childhood to find that they're attracted to certain kind of causes. It's not abnormal to find that in perhaps cult groups and other radical groups tend to attract people that have been through trauma. So when I was watching it and I saw that Wanda had joined that society of people, I wasn't surprised that she somehow was led to that because of what she had been through. And it's not always the case for everyone. Other people find other ways, but sometimes you find that this happens. I also found it interesting that they said that the Mind Stone, had killed many people that had tried to wield it, but Wanda was someone that didn't die when she wielded it. So I wondered if the experience and the pain that she had to deal with prepared her in a way to be able to handle the Mind Stone. Let me know what your thoughts are on that. For those that were watching and we're keenly observing how Agatha Harkness was walking through Wanda's memories, the kind of experience I can liken that to in the real world could be like going to a therapy session, or even more so a hypnotherapy session, and having that hypnotherapist walk through your memories with you. You know, because like I said earlier, of how traumatic these experiences can be. They can be so buried deep within our subconscious that we need help with retrieving them. Now, obviously, Wanda didn't want to retrieve these memories. I would also like to add that you could see that Wanda kept on going through different iterations on the show that she was streaming, like when her family setup was like a TV show. What Wanda was doing was a form of escapism and evasion. Every time that she felt like something was going to dig deeper and find her out and force her to come to terms with reality of what's happening, she would evade from it and time jump into another decade. So that's what she was doing there. If anyone missed that, that was Wanda's form of running away from dealing with her pain, and of course the fear of losing him and losing these moments that they had in time. Okay, and this is not the first time I'm talking about retrieving memories and dissociation on the channel. If you would like to learn more about that, you can check out my Umbrella Season 2 review and go on there with that. Well, here in this case, we find that Agatha was doing this, of course, for her own selfish reasons. It's not that she was trying to help Wanda. She just wanted to understand how Wanda was able to access this level of power that she had and what she could do to access it. So she did the equivalent of what a hypnotherapist or therapist would do with you if you're in session, to help you uncover your wounds and understand where your trauma is coming from. You trace it back to your childhood and things like that. I have to say that when I started watching the miniseries and I was into perhaps episode 3 or 4, I was thinking to myself, is this depression? Does Wanda have depression and she doesn't know, and this is her own way of dealing with it? Especially when we got to the part where things were going crazy and they were out of her control and she didn't know what was going on until she discovered that it was Agatha. Something else to note is that in many ways Wanda didn't mean for the hurt she caused people to happen. It takes you to things like hurt people. She was obviously trying to soothe her own pain, and you could hear that repeated often when the people that she had trapped in that town with her would say that they were in so much pain, and that Wanda was in their head and in their thoughts, and they were feeling the pain with Wanda. And sometimes when people are hurt, they're injured, and I mean this metaphorically, they get blood in everyone. So essentially, Wanda, in a bid to suppress her pain of having gone through this horrible traumatic experience of losing vision, she was unknowingly, yes, suppressing the pain, but then putting the pain on others without actually knowing. And it was entirely happening unconsciously. This is why she felt so terrible when she found out how hurt they were, and she lifted the veil so that they could escape. So the story starts off with Wanda looking like the villain, and then we find out that she's not really the villain of the story. Can you entirely call someone a villain if they didn't know that they were hurting you? There's so many people with disorders that are, for example, people that are like on the scale of psychopathy, and they hurt people, and you wonder, is my pain valid? My pain of them hurting me, is it valid if they did not know? And I have to say that if you're on the end of someone hurting you because they are hurt and going through something, you don't have to stay there and take it with them. And yes, your pain is valid. But there is something to say about Wanda's remorse. She definitely felt terrible about that. Like many people that have lost someone that they love, someone that they care about in their life, something that is difficult about their process of grief is that they didn't have the opportunity for closure. I mean, imagine that. There are people that still go through this grief. Relationship ends and they can't say goodbye. And then you have someone that you love, that your life is snatched away, and you're not able to say goodbye. So I thought it was quite touching when we see the final scenes where Wanda and Vision finally get to say a proper goodbye. I felt that was something that was significant, especially for Wanda, because it's giving her that closure that she was denied when she lost him the first time. I would also like to comment on when Monica Rambeau was trying to reach out to Wanda when she came into the town as herself. And she was telling Wanda, I understand what happened. I know about Thanos. I understand you're hurting. Let me help you. It's not uncommon for people going through grief to shut themselves out from the people that care for them. But unfortunately, no matter how much you love someone and care for them and want to help them, you can't want to help them more than they want to help themselves. Yes. That's a journey that they have to pick up for themselves and walk through by themselves. You can help them by supporting them as they walk, but you cannot do the work for them. So there wouldn't have been much of a story if Wanda had just gotten into therapy after this happened. But where do you see a superhero in therapy? Okay? So I thought that is especially key. The fact that Disney takes a very powerful guy like Bucky and puts him in the chair in that Falcon and Winter Soldier. If a superhero can sit in a chair, then you can. Okay, no one is too big to need help. And yes, there will be voices like Harkness in your mind telling you that you are broken beyond repair, like she told Wanda. You will always be broken. That's a lie. That's a lie. I forgot to mention about Wanda also losing her brother in the other iterations of the Marvel franchise. So this is someone that has dealt with a lot of loss and a lot of pain, and all that trauma has been suppressed at some point without dealing with it. It would either sip out in little ways or they would just explode. And if you could see when Wanda actually did what she did that triggered everything, she tried to get his body. She said she wanted to bury him. She didn't want to bring him to life. At the time, she didn't even know it was possible. She wanted Vision's body. She wanted her own form of closure, and she was denied that. And so she went to the plot of land that was supposed to be theirs to live their life together before everything happened, and she just exploded. I'm saying this to you, and I just hope it touches someone out there. If you're hearing this and you feel like you could be on your way to being a Wanda, or you don't even have to be on your way. It doesn't have to be a series of trauma. You don't have to let it build up. And you feel that you need help. Talk to someone, please. Reach out to somebody. Get help. See a professional. See a trauma therapist. Get a grief coach. I'm sorry that I'm leaving you on a little solemn note. I do feel like the story was quite deep right there, and compared to what we have typically from Marvel, it's a little more somber, but it leaves us with a lot of thoughts. And so with that, I come to the end of this video. If you do like it, please like, comment, and subscribe. Click on the notification bell below so that you're the first to know every time we drop a new video. And share this video with someone. I promise you, you could be saving a life. And until next time, I love you. Bye.